So thank you. So as we can see, there are a lot of different stereotypes and assumptions that are being made. And think about how that impedes, again, our ability to really see each other and understand and know each other when we go in with that assumption. And that was why in the beginning also I had us introduce each other by ourselves by giving our gender. That's oftentimes what people will make an assumption about someone's gender without knowing how they actually self-identify in terms of their gender or their sexual orientation. You know, asking if someone has a boyfriend or a girlfriend when they may be same-gender loving, and, you know, again, do we assume heterosexuality? So all of these are assumptions that people make on a regular basis. Slide. And that they really impede that effective intercultural communication. Slide, please. Great. And so these are just some of the items that I wanted to add to the list of how to be more effective in our intercultural communication. And that, again, you see how number one is being self-aware, being mindful of the kinds of assumptions and biases that we carry and how that interferes with our interactions with others, asking open-ended questions, etc. Okay, slide, please. So just reminding people to kind of use active listening. Slide, please. Great, and so there are a lot of different terms and definitions that we use when it comes to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and I don't have time to go into all of them today, but there's one that I particularly wanted to touch on. So slide, please. And this was something that was developed by a group of middle schoolers that I was working with on a global Citizenry curriculum last summer. And we were talking about the difference between equity and equality. And I asked them to give us an example. And of course, being kids, the first thing they went to was candy. And so here we see that there are kids of different heights. And then we have the candy that's all at the same height, right? And so if we want to advance equality, slide, we see that we've given each of the kids the same height stool so that they can all reach the candy. And that's equality, right? Everyone has the same opportunity. So what do you notice about the effect of equality? So can every kid reach the candy? No. And why not? Because they're different heights. Okay. Is our height something that we can control? No, it's something that we were born with, right? Other than wearing heels. It's something that we're born with. And so we see here that equality is giving everyone the same thing. And that is a good thing. It seems like a good thing. But the net result of that is that it doesn't ensure equal access, right? That not everyone has the same access. And if we go on to the next slide, equity is where we're giving people what they need in order to ensure equal opportunity, equal access. So what happened here? What was the solution? We have stools of different heights to accommodate the differing needs of the kids. And by giving the kids what they needed, which was different, it wasn't equal, it was different, we ensured equity, that everyone had access and opportunity. So that's just a very quick kind of lesson in equity versus equality, and I want you all to be really mindful of those terms and think about the implications in so many areas. Slide, please. So this is, again, the total model of global competence. And now let's talk about, slide, please, why is global competence important? And slide, please. Global competence is important, slide, it's an animation, in so many areas. So for example, in education, so having globally competent teachers, educating students to become globally competent really affects the quality of education and educational outcomes. Slide, please. Also, we think about public health. When we train clinicians to be simply clinically competent without actually ensuring that they are interculturally competent as well, we know that that affects the quality of healthcare and the outcomes of healthcare. Slide, please. Business. Again, people can have all the business savvy in the world, but if they don't have good intercultural competence, they're not going to be as effective with their clients and customers. Slide, please. So basically, global competence is necessary for societies and democracies and institutions to thrive. Slide, please. And so we're talking about also, there's a real recognition in the world about the need for global citizenry and global competence education. And we see here former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who declared that education is critical to nurture global citizens who can rise to the challenges of the 21st century. And so when we're thinking about global citizenry, what does that mean? What's the definition of global citizenry? Slide, please. And here is the definition developed again by my firm, is really possessing a deep understanding of ourselves and our unique and shared history, and cultivating a critical consciousness of power and privilege in relation to others. Slide, please. Valuing and promoting diversity, interacting and communicating with integrity, and acting ethically to advance social and environmental justice in the world. And so that's, again, the working definition, slide please, that we use, and this is the framework that we use with these pillars of identity, diversity, interconnectedness, equity, human rights, and environmental justice that all form important pillars to this work of cultivating global citizenry. So now I just wanted us to watch a short video clip from a video that my firm produced on what it means to be globally competent. So if we could go ahead and play the video clip. How would you describe a globally competent person?
Someone who tries to understand how things are connected.
Someone who embraces our culture and our practices and actually encourages it.
Someone who knows how to interact with people of different cultures. They may not need to know everything about every different culture because that's pretty much impossible.
Open to listening.
It would be someone who is curious, not interested in exoticism.
It's about a commitment to equality, a commitment to justice, because only then can you truly see somebody as your equal.
Being a human, if you interact with the person as a human being.
One that reads stories about other countries, other cultures, and one that reads the news.
Do have an openness to other cultures.
Person who is willing to listen, who is willing to take a step back.
Always ready to learn.
Someone who realizes that no one culture has superiority over another.
Someone who realizes that they do not know all things about all cultures.
Has to be someone who approaches things with a little bit of uncertainty. You can't say that you really understand a situation because things are constantly in a state of flux. So you have to make the effort to try and understand things as they are now, but also keep in mind that things will always be changing in any given culture and setting. So, and trying to make sure that you understand the connectivity of that.
Tell us about your experience of cultural insensitivity or discrimination by an institution.
When I went to the DMV, and there was a couple of individuals in front of me who were at the front desk receiving services, and the lady at the desk was very nice, sweet to them, but when it was my turn, I was treated differently.
I am almost always randomly screened for an extra pat down.
During those times I had to miss school. Those are days of prayer. Those are very important days to Jewish people. But I would have teachers roll their eyes or say I was lying when I gave them the note from my rabbi saying I had to miss school.
I got pulled aside by an officer in the airport and they asked me where I was from, and I said I'm American, and they didn't believe me.
I had a couple of other friends of color who told me that they experienced the same thing, of looking through the brochures and feeling like, oh, I see people who look like me, and then arriving on campus and realizing that they see very few people who look like them.
And someone innocently said, oh, yes, you know what? Yeah, we discussed it, but we thought just because you're from a different culture, you may not appreciate, those kind of sports and wearing bikinis and being naked in front of men. So we decided to be respectful of your culture and just excuse you from the event.
She told me, no, you cannot go to school. You're not supposed to get admission. No, why? Give me the reason why. And she has no reason whatsoever.
How would you describe a globally competent
Aaron, we'll go ahead and stop there. Great. So how many of us have had experiences like we're being described in the video? Yeah. Okay. All right, so there's more in the video, obviously, but for the sake of time, we'll just continue. So increasingly, we're kind of more interconnected and in contact with each other in some ways, and then slide. We're also increasingly isolated, the more that our connections are kind of electronic or virtual. And yet the need to be connected, to have a sense of belonging, is really a very human and natural need. And so it's something that Brené Brown is a researcher, a sociologist who studies this and has amazing TED Talks and speaks on this topic about how do we foster more mutual understanding, more interconnectedness in a world where people are, again, kind of increasingly isolated from each other. Slide. And then, again, another quote about just really responding to that deep need for belonging. Slide. So I wanted us to talk about, earlier we alluded to identities and privilege and power. And so this is one way to kind of represent these primary and secondary dimensions of diversity and identities. Slide, please. So I want you all to look at this list of identities and think about, for each of these identities, do you fall more into the dominant group that holds more of the social power that's considered socially preferable in a given society? Or do you fall more in the group of the non-dominant group that holds less power? So just kind of go through each of those and see where you fall. I'll just give you a moment to do that silently with yourself. You can just do it internally.